guys, I'm Steve, founder of Backridge Tough, and today I'd like to show you how to use our sharpening kit to sharpen your saw. So today I have with me my trusty Husqvarna 346 XP. I took a while to clean it up so I could show you how to sharpen your saw in this video. So the first thing you're going to need to know before you can sharpen your saw is what size file you're going to need to use for your specific chain. So there's a couple different ways you can figure that out, and I'm going to do a separate video on just that information because sometimes it can be a bit tricky, but it should hopefully be listed right in your owner's manual. And another easy way to find out is if you happen to have a box for a new chain for your saw, it has some very helpful information on the front and the back that will tell you what size file you need. So on the front it happens to tell you, for instance, the distance between the drive links, how many drive links you have, what size bar this chain is made for. And then on the back, it has a chart that shows all different types of chains and what file sizes you should use and what angle you should use. So this saw is a 346 XP. This chain happens to be a 21 LPX 066. So if I go on the back and I look at a 21 LPX, it says I need to use a 3/16 file. So in our kit, we have a 5/32, a 3/16, and a 7/32. So the 3/16 file is the middle file. It also says the angle for this chain is 25 degrees. So we'll keep that in mind when we're going to sharpen our saw. So the first thing you need to do is just grab your handle, and in this case I'm going to grab the middle file. And all you need to do is just simply push the file in there. It should stay pretty well put. If it doesn't, you can just simply tap it on some kind of hard surface to make it more secure, but don't do it too hard because you are going to have to take the handle off to use your flat file to file your rakers. Then you're going to grab your file guide. Now there is no front and back to the file guide, but there is writing on it, so I always put it in so that I can read the writing. And on the top you'll notice that there's 30-degree marks, 25-degree marks, and 10-degree marks, and those are the marks that align your file guide as you're filing your teeth. So you're going to keep that angle parallel to your bar, and that's going to make it so that way you file every single tooth with the same angle so that it cuts nice and straight and even as you go down through a log. So all you need to get started is just simply loosen up these nuts on the top, and you're going to take your file and you're just going to simply push them through the bottom all the way through, and you'll notice that there's an area on your file where your grooves are that you can use for filing, and then you have the smooth parts. So just try to center your file in between the two nuts and then turn it over and then just simply tighten the nuts finger tight. Now a lot of cheaper kits just have real simple clips that hold the file in rather than nuts like this. And unfortunately people have a really hard time with those because the clips don't hold the file tight enough, and when you start filing your chain, the file moves all around inside the guide, and it can be quite a problem. So all you have to do is just finger tighten these. You don't have to use pliers or anything. They hold really well. You can see I just barely tightened those, and it's holding there nice and snug. So when you're done filing your chain with your filing guide and your round file, you're simply going to take the handle off. You're going to grab your flat file and push that in just like you did your round file, just nice and easy so it's secure, so that when you go back and forth it doesn't fall out. Then you're going to grab your raker gauge or depth gauge, and you're going to use that to file down the height of your rakers. So on your raker gauge you have 25 thousandths on the outsides, and you have 30 thousandths of an inch on the inside. And that is the difference in height between the top of your tooth and the raker. So every single time your teeth go around and make a cut, they're going to remove 25 thousandths or 30 thousandths of wood with each cut. So that's going to depend on what your saw specifies for your chain. Typically I like to use a 30 thousandths myself. I like to have a little bit more wood come out, but I do have relatively powerful saws. They spin up really well because they're the XPs, which are the professional versions, and therefore I don't have any problems. But you do need to be careful that you don't file your rakers down too much, because if you do, then if your saw doesn't have enough power, it might bog or might not even be able to make the cut. Or if you have a saw with a lot of power and you have a big difference in height, it's going to really grab and it's going to really want to just pull you right through the wood. So just be careful about that. All right, so that's how you use the different pieces in the kit. Now let's take our saw. I'm going to go upstairs and put it in one of my vices, and I'll show you exactly how you actually sharpen the chain. Okay guys, I have my file and my file guide, and I have my file handle on, so I'm all ready to get started. Before you get started, there's three things that you need to pay attention to. One, it makes it so much easier to sharpen your saw if you have it mounted in something like a vise mounted to a bench. That's going to make it so your saw is nice and firm, and your bar is not going to move around on you when you try to actually sharpen your chain. If it's moving around on you, it's going to make it really hard to maintain that nice 25-degree angle so that all your teeth are the same. Two, you want to make sure that you have the right tension on your chain. So your chain should not be crazy loose. It should be relatively tight. If it's loose, when you try to sharpen it, it'll roll around on you, and that'll also make it difficult to get that nice sharp edge that you need to really get your saw running well. And thirdly, some chains like this 16-inch bar actually has a spot on it right here where you have two teeth on the same side going the same direction. And so that makes it easy to know when you start, where you start, and when you've gone all the way around. But in some cases, like on all my 18-inch chains, every tooth just alternates back and forth. There's no spot that I can tell. So just get yourself a magic marker, black, red, blue, silver, it doesn't really matter, and just color in that tooth when you start, and that'll make it really easy for you to know that you've gone one complete revolution and you sharpened all of the teeth on that one side. Then you can turn your saw around, mark another tooth, and you'll be able to do the other side. And that'll help you make sure that you get a very consistent, nice sharp tooth on every single tooth of your chain. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera, we'll get a top-down view, and I'll show you exactly what you do when you actually use the file guide to sharpen your saw. So I have my file and my file guide with my file handle, so I'm all set to go. But before I start, I mentioned before that in this case I do have two teeth going on the same side, as you can see here. So I could use these two teeth as a marker to know that I've been all the way around my chain, but just for demonstration purposes, let's say that I had alternating teeth. So what I could do is I just got a blue marker here, and I'm going to color this guy blue. So that way I know that this is where I started. Just like that. So that's really easy for me to see and be able to tell when I've gone all the way around one time. So when you do your filing with your file guide, what you're going to do is you're going to set the top of the tooth on the metal, and then the file itself is actually going to give you that nice perfect curve to your tooth, so that way it takes a nice cut, but your top of your tooth isn't too long, which can cause it to get dull really quick. If you use a regular file, you kind of have to worry about the angle that you're going up and down, and you also have to worry about undercutting it and all kinds of things. Using the file guide takes all of that stuff out of the mix and makes it so much easier. When you do this, what you're going to do is you're going to set it on the tooth like this, and you're going to slide it across a certain number of times on every single tooth, so that way you get all the teeth exactly the same. But don't file it with just one hand. If you do that, it's going to put a lot of tension right on this one spot, and sometimes people actually end up breaking the files. They could break off and then poke you in the skin and give you a big cut. That wouldn't be good. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to hold the file with both hands like this, and you're going to go across the tooth this way. You're always going to go from the short edge out towards the point. You're never going to file backwards. You're always going to go across like this. So what it looks like is I'm going to put my file there, and then you see, remember we said 25 degrees. So here is our 25-degree mark, and that line should be parallel to my bar. And if I do that all the time that I go across my tooth, then I should get a consistent angle on that tooth. So sometimes if you're new to this, just go across to that line, get it lined up, maintain the angle, come back, go across once, twice, like that, and you know you're going to have that consistent angle. And then you would move to the next tooth. Now, I said 2 times. If your teeth are relatively sharp, then all you should be doing is just basically maintaining that nice sharp edge. If you have a tooth that is more rounded than the other, you may need to do more strokes. But if you do 3 strokes on this or 4 strokes on this tooth, you want to make sure that you do 4 strokes on all of your teeth, so that way your teeth are wearing and they all have the same height all at the same time. It'll make it so much easier to file your rakers. You won't have some teeth that are higher or lower than others. So again, you're just gonna, so you go to the next tooth, hold it with both hands, go up if you're new, just kind of line up your angle. 1, 2 strokes, go to your next tooth, 1, 2 strokes, and you'll see that you're gonna get that nice, perfect, very sharp edge. If you feel that with your fingers, it should be really pokey. The edge is very sharp. It almost feels like a razor blade. If you push on it too hard, you almost cut your skin. And you're gonna keep doing that on every single tooth, all the way around, until you come back to your blue marker again. But notice I'm only doing the teeth that are facing this way. You can see the angle on these teeth are opposite. So to do those teeth, what you're gonna do is you're gonna loosen up your vise. You're gonna turn your saw around, put it back in your vise. And if you want, since your tooth is already blue here, you could just start with the one that's after it. But now since my saw is facing the other way, before we were filing this way, now we need to file this way, and again we're gonna go from the short edge out to the point. So we would hold our file with both hands, we would go across, 1, 2, we would go to our next tooth, we would go 1, 2, and every time we do this, we want to make sure that we're maintaining that 25-degree angle so that we do all of the teeth the same, like that. And then you would do the same thing. You would go all the way around the chain until you came back to your blue tooth again. After you sharpen all of your teeth on both sides, now it's time to adjust your rakers. To do that, so you're going to take your handle off of your round file, you're going to put your flat file in there, just so it's nice and snug, and you're going to use your raker gauge or depth gauge. Now remember, on your depth gauge you have 30 thousandths in the middle, 25 thousandths on the end. So in my case I'm going to use the 30 thousandths, and what you're going to do is you're going to try to line up the metal parts here on the top of the tooth so that way you can adjust your rakers. So you can see I'm going to put this piece on here, right? This piece right here is going to go on here, this is going to go on this tooth, this is going to go on this tooth, and what's going to happen is that's going to expose certain rakers, so these two here. And the way that you tell if your raker needs to be adjusted is you can take your flat file and you can just slide it across like this, and if it hits, if it stops, then you know that your raker needs to be taken down. In this case, my rakers are actually perfectly flat right with the guide, but I'm going to move this a little bit just so you can understand what I'm saying. So I'm going to move this down, and you'll see that as I do this, see how it's hitting on that raker. So in that case, what you'd want to do, over time you'll get used to this process, but you can tell it's hitting. So you just remove the guide, you take a stroke off, and you can see how that's shiny, how I just took some metal off. And you'd put it back on there again, and you go until it didn't hit anymore. And once it doesn't hit anymore, then you know that you're flat with your file gauge, and that's going to give you that perfect 30 thousandths of a difference between the top of the tooth and the raker gauge on all of your teeth. Now when you have this in certain spots like this, you can actually do this raker and this raker, but you always want to do the raker that goes with the tooth that the metal is on. So you would do this one, this raker goes with this tooth, this raker goes with this tooth, so you could do either one of these. If you wanted to use the 25 thousandths that's on the end, then what you need to do is you put it on your chain, and you're going to do the raker that goes out beyond it. So in other words, you have this tooth and this is your raker. So you'd put it on top and you would adjust this one out here on the end. And then what you would do is you would just simply move your chain, go to the next tooth, you would see if this one hits, take some off, and then check it again. And you would just you would just do the same thing. Use your blue mark, go all the way around your whole chain, do each raker, and then when you get done, you're going to have that perfect 25 thousandths of a gap between your top of your tooth and your raker all the way around. The reason that you have to file your rakers down each time is because if you look at a tooth, the angle of the tooth is actually back. It goes from the tip of the tooth back to the chain. It continuously goes down. So as you file your teeth with your guide, right? As you file your teeth down with your guide, you're actually bringing the height of the top of your tooth down every single time that you do that. So when you bring in the height of your tooth down, you also have to bring the height of your raker down in order to get that consistent difference of 25 or 30 thousandths. I hope that gives you a general understanding of how to sharpen your saw with our chainsaw filing kit. I will be making some other videos that will show you what you need to do when you hit maybe like a nail in a log that you didn't know was there, or you run into a rock when you're cutting some brush. Those are definitely some difficult situations to get through. But until then, go out, get your kit, get your saw all nice and sharp, and keep it humming through wood. You guys take care.